Well, of course, the crazy part of this is that we're likely to have an international border open in New South Wales before we, in fact, have borders open to some of our other states, which is a little bit silly and a little bit difficult to cope with. However, having said that, we know at 80% a whole range of additional freedoms will come to the people of New South Wales, and I think pretty much along the same lines in Victoria ultimately. But in terms of the international border opening, I think the new Premier is incredibly keen to see that happen within the right health provisions. So I'd be, very optimistic that we're going to see that at the end of October, beginning of November now. But having said that, it will be all about visiting friends and family in the short term, because to be frank with you, nobody's taking a holiday in Australia if they've got a quarantine here.
Right, exactly. We need to see more news on that quarantine or that 7-day stay at home. But how long do you think it will take for the tourism sector to recover? You've got some fairly sobering statistics and outlook on, I guess, the plausibility of some companies to be able to survive, and say that there needs to be more support for the tourism sector.
Look, it gives me no joy at all to be gloomy in an environment where I suppose things are beginning to open up. But essentially, everything that we're going to see for the next maybe 4 months is really going to be all about visiting friends and family. So people coming home to Australia, or potentially Australians visiting people they love that they haven't been able to connect with for a very long time. And thus, they're not too worried about the quarantine issue. But if you're an international traveller, a leisure tourist, or even a business traveller, the prospect of coming here to do quarantine for any length of time is going to be extremely unattractive. In addition to that, if you're a leisure traveller, you'll want certainty that the domestic borders will be open, so that not only can you see the Opera House, but you can go to the Great Barrier Reef or Mingaloo Reef or Uluru or the Barossa Valley. And at the moment, that's not clear. In addition to that, there are issues to do with aviation capacity. Many of the international carriers who previously would have come into Australia have taken their tin, their aeroplanes and their expert staff to other parts of the world that are in fact fully open, facing a much stronger prospect for growth. So it's going to be a case of re-attracting those international airlines and those routes back into Australia. Unfortunately, that's all going to take time. And it may not be until, the middle of next year that we actually see international travel coming back to what it once was. And it may take years for the industry as a whole to recover.